You're listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.
Josh Felker, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right. I'm missing a few cylinders right now.
I heard you're just getting over your cold, right?
I am, yep.
Hey, last time I was here, you guys were super popular.
Yeah.
But you guys are even more popular.
Well, we're always trying to grow. I think that's where a lot of people get into mistakes of business. They get complacent, rest in their hands, and don't grow. What I enjoy about when people come out here is it's been 6 months or a year since I came in, and you've done so much. I like hearing that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what my end point is. I do know that this year we got an event pavilion I'm putting in, an outdoor open air pavilion for fundraisers and events. And then the next goal is to build about a 10,000 square foot building for big retail stuff. So
okay.
Yeah.
Because last time I was here, you were fixing to complete the
sporting
clays.
Yeah.
So what have you done since then?
Well, since then we put in a 40 by 80 outdoor building for my guys. It's really a range building, but it holds some storage. But it mainly does is it gives we put a full workout gym in there, full bathroom, full kitchen, break room, and some storage. But that was all for my guys because there's got to be some perks for working at a gun range other than free shooting and some discounts on firearms, because it's definitely no 401ks. But yeah, we put a lot of money into that. This year we did start offering medical insurance or to help for that. So yeah.
Oh, really? That's good.
Yeah.
I tell you what, there's a lot going on here. So there's your guys, your staff, your females, they're doing a lot of work. So that's good.
Yeah, on average we have about 800 people a week come through here, and on Saturdays we'll have anywhere from 300 to 500 shooters. So it's always growing out here. We got more shooting positions we're putting in. Like I said, we're always refining.
Yeah.
And I'm always sinking our profits back into this stupid place.
Hey, I don't know who the blonde lady is out front, but she has a great personality.
Oh, that's good to
Yeah,
hear.
she's doing awesome. I'm a people watcher.
Oh, okay.
So while I was sitting out there, I just was keeping an eye on things, and man, she's got a great personality.
Oh, that was Kim, our fingerprint tech. I was like,
yes,
he was
fingerprints.
working today.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
she was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, one thing I wanted to jump into with you is, I know you're a busy guy, is I guess the ATF ruling that came in on the 13th with pistol braces.
Last Friday, everyone's been waiting for it to get published. So they've published their final ruling, and before it goes into the registry, it basically makes you a felon if you have a unregistered SBR after 120 days after it goes onto the final registry publish it. So yeah.
Is that what happened on the 13th, or does that still have to happen?
No, it hasn't been. It hasn't been officially. They just released their final ruling, and then when it gets published, then you have that 120 days.
Okay, so that hasn't started yet.
No, the time ticker hasn't started yet. It's waiting. Yeah.
So I guess once you have to register it, the federal government has a copy or knowledge of you owning what's now turning into a SBR, right? So it's a short barrel rifle, correct?
Right. So anything that's pistols that's got a brace, which the crazy thing is, just like the bump stocks, there's letters that say this is legal by the ATF, lawful to own. It doesn't make it a short barreled rifle, et cetera, et cetera. All these manufacturers had to go through a review process with ATF and say, yep, it's good. The brace was designed so you could shoot as a disabled person, one-handed, to assist, because apparently pistols are supposed to be shot one-handed, although everyone knows that shooting a pistol one-handed is not a great idea.
No.
It's not as accurate.
Even if you're shooting a Glock, you're using both hands.
Right. So anything after they now pulled it out of their fourth point of contact that, hey, a pistol brace, it makes it so you can shoulder fire it, and which you do, and it's a safer way to run the rifle or the pistol, but it'll make it a short barrel rifle. And you have a couple options. You can pay $200 and get a tax stamp of Form 1. Form 1 is where you create your own short barrel rifle or own suppressor. Dealer's not required to be intermediary on that. And you submit the paperwork. You have to get it, the tax stamp, you have to get it serialized. You have to put a special serial number on it or trust name on it. You can do that. Spend $200 and get in the registry. The problem with that is it's always going to be on the registry. It's another way to register firearms.
And that's a federal registry?
Yeah, that's federal registry on the National Firearms Act. Anything that has a tax stamp, full auto suppressors, it's registered by the ATF. That's a tracked item. You can remove the pistol brace, and as long as there's nothing on that pistol that makes it so it's easily shoulderable. And this is about a 200-page document, so I'm not 100% confident on everything. If it makes it shoulderable, that'd still be illegal. So if it's a buffer tube just coming out, that could probably reasonably be assumed that that's not easily shoulderable, possibly, up until the ATF changes their mind again. Or if there's anything optic-wise that would require the same eye relief as you would on a rifle, that makes it illegal. Or you can destroy the pistol, or you can add a 16-inch barrel on it to make it a rifle. So kind of my short and fuzzy of it is, as a FFL dealer, we have to comply with federal law, fortunately or unfortunately. So right now what we're doing is any of our pistols that have the pistol brace on, we're selling them just as we normally would, hoping that the ATF will have their minds changed by either Congress or by some sort of lawsuit. The problem with lawsuits, they take forever to hit, like the bump fire, and I'll get to that in a moment. We have to follow federal law. We'll do that. And as we get closer to that 120-day mark, what we'll most likely do is either sell anything that's got a pistol brace on it and take $200 off, or remove the pistol brace. I don't want to encourage people to get into registering firearms, because the shall not be infringed is a pretty big statement. The Second Amendment is kind of interesting that there is no incentivization for the government to want people to follow the Second Amendment. It's to prevent tyranny. So I see this as a big registration. Yeah. And so what I'm recommending to people is take your pistol brace off, and if it's separated, unless it's easily assemblable, then it's not a pistol, it's not a rifle, it's not a short barrel rifle. Why spend $200 on something?
So just for me to understand a little bit better, if somebody has a pistol and it's got a brace on it with an optic on it.
No, even without the optic.
Even without the optic?
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming this setup, if you still have the optic on it. Yeah. If you take the brace off, are you legal or are you still illegal? That's
kind of one of those good question mark things, because it says about eye relief, if it's the normal eye relief that you'd require for a rifle. Well, so red dots, they don't require that eye relief like you would for a rifle, but could you put a red dot on a rifle? And yeah, it's one of those definite slopes where it just puts everything in favor for the ATF.
So you're almost better off keeping it without the brace, without the optic, and keeping your gun. Now, are iron sights the same as do they fall into that?
That could be construed to that too. I mean, this is some vague language. It's 200 pages, and like I mentioned, I've breezed through it, but I've not taken the time to sit through and read all of it. And most of it is fluff on why they're doing this and how it'll make the nation safer, apparently. So
is there verbiage on what their reasoning behind that is? The safety part? Because when you're losing a point of contact, you're definitely not any safer.
Right. So this is, you ever seen that ATF cartoon? It shows a guy showing a slideshow. Talks about NFA rulings. Mm-mm. And he's like, well, he shows up a short-barreled rifle, and it's got a fixed stock. He's like, this is illegal. And then he shows a pistol brace. This is legal. And it's like, what? That look the same. And then he'll show one with an angled foregrip. This is legal. Then he shows one with a vertical foregrip. This is illegal on a pistol. And you're like, why? What's the difference on that? It's confusing and vague, and it's very frustrating is what it is. It's very frustrating because people buy these rifles because it's lighter weight. Mm-hmm. And I say rifle, this pistol, because it's lighter weight and I can shoulder it, and if I want to use it for my home defense or whatever else, I've got an easy compact.
Or even if you're going to add a suppressor on it, you've got a shorter I guess if it's home defense, I think what people don't understand about like home defense shorter weapons is when you're going through a hallway, the shorter the weapon, the easier it is to maneuver through hallway and doorways because you don't have that long.
No, people do understand that as soon as they pick up a rifle or anything else. It's compact, it's easy to carry, maneuver around, and does the overall length of a firearm make it any less or more lethal or make it less easy to use?
Yeah.
You know, when we're talking about that's the crazy part. You know, the rifle, the AR-15s especially, have gotten a bad rep, but pistols are used more in crimes than rifles. It's just because these are compact. So what we're essentially doing on this with a pistol brace is making a pistol longer, which is somewhat kind of easier to carry around the house, but it's still not as small as a pistol. It's that's that children's story. My oatmeal's too hot, mine's too cold. Nothing's right, nothing's wrong. I can't. It's confusing all day long, and that's the scary part. So people that are in the know in the gun community, like, you know, we all have our little things that we're knowledgeable about. We're subject matter experts, right? And there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people bought legally in the past decade a shorter pistol, but not quite a rifle, that's got a brace on it, and bought it lawfully, legally at a gun store. And it was lawful to own, legal to own. And in, you know, a couple months, it'll become a felony. Do you think they're really aware of this?
Right.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be forced into either being a felon, not realizing they're a felon, or, you know, and that goes to that, is anybody going to be knocking on doors? So on the desk here, I have what's considered a machine gun. And these are the bump stocks.
Okay.
This is lawful legal for me to have because I cut it up as the ATF required, cut out that section. This used to be lawful to own. And there's multiple ATF letters saying this was legal. Then the Las Vegas shooter supposedly, and I say that in air quotes, used this to lay hate on a bunch of people, innocent people. And so they made these illegal by pen stroke. They didn't give any option for these to become Form 1 as anything.
Yeah,
because
like
they consider this a
now?
machine gun.
Okay.
They consider this a machine gun.
Got you.
This plastic brace, a machine gun, which was okay. At least now they're giving you an option, but is that really an option? Because where does this stop? I mean, Where does it stop? You're on a gun registry at that point. Anytime you put a tax stamp on something, that is accountable by ATF. They have to, if they knock on your door, and they have every lawful right to do that when it's a tax stamp, show me that tax stamp item, whether it be suppressor, short barrel rifle, or full auto machine gun. And by the way, there's no full autos allowed to be owned since 1986. I forget the exact date, but anything that was on the registry up to that date was lawful legal. It had to be tax stamped. Anything after that, you couldn't own machine guns unless it was for government purposes or dealers as demos. So there's no new machine guns being produced for the general public to own. So it's all of a sudden very limited. Well, what point do they say, okay, these are tax stamped, but we're going to make these illegal? Or what's next? What does this have to do with anything? I don't understand.
It almost seems like another means to get people onto the registry.
Right.
Because like these guns, I know people that own these types of guns because when they went to the gun store, you either had an SBR, again, for people who don't know, that's a short barrel rifle, on this right next to one of these that had the arm brace on them.
Mm-hmm.
SBR, you've got to wait a certain time period, and you've got to pay a tax for it, or you could purchase this one right away.
Mm-hmm.
So without any malice or anything else, people said, well, why would I do that? Let me buy this guy, because it was literally shaped the same.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of difference to it. So millions of people bought these guns. And now millions of people will be felons in 120 days if they don't register or do the things that you said.
Right, and a lot of people will go, well, I'll just do the right thing. I'll follow the law, and I'll get it registered. Form 4, tax stamp. Guess what happens every time you go to sell that thing? You have to, so say Joe Schmuckatelli registers and makes an SBR. Form 1'd it, now it's a tax stamp item. When he goes to sell it, when he or she goes to sell it, the new buyer has to apply for a tax stamp for that item, even though there's an item attached, a tax stamp attached to it, for him or her to have the king's permission to own this tax stamp item.
Right.
And then it can be transferred. The only way that they can sell this tax stamp item without paying the $200 tax stamp is to remove it from the registry, i.e. either destroy it or put it back in pistol configuration. So that's forever that is a tax stamp item. It's on the registry until it gets removed from the registry by destruction, or they put it back as to a pistol, which who knows how long that will happen.
Yeah. And I guess another thing to play devil's advocate is, who's to say there won't be more regulations on even just the barrel length? At some point, they'll say, well, no, you can't even have these barrel lengths any longer.
Right. The slippery slope that the Second Amendment community always talks about is it's right there in front of us, but we're not seeing it. We're not seeing the forest through the trees. We're just too close. But if we were to step back and say 20 years from now and go, oh, I saw where that happened there and there and there and there and there and there and there, it's just, we're getting people to comply. So my advice is do not break federal law, but I wouldn't register these stupid things. Sure. I just remove the brace. And that's officially, as a dealer, that's the official communication.
Well, let me ask you this.
I'm not saying break the law, just don't register it, take the stupid arm brace off, and do what you may.
I've been somewhat of a naive gun owner, right? I've bought several, and I never really thought twice about where that information lives, right? So if I go and buy a Glock 43X, because that's the last one I bought, I really like it. If I go and buy that from you, you do a background check with the FBI, correct?
So where's your information lay is where you're asking, right? So we do a NICS background check. We're required to do that on every firearm purchase. All dealers are. The only time we're allowed to bypass the NICS background check is if you have a Texas license to carry, because the background check on that is much more thorough than the NICS system.
So who's getting the NICS info? Federal government?
The feds are ATF. It's going through. It's got a little bit of FBI. It's usually a computer program, software that just checks, and if there's any glitches in the system, that's when an FBI reviewer looks at it and goes, okay, you have a common last name. Is this common last name, or you're flagged in the system because you're a peace officer? They'll often flag you, and proceed, versus the automatic. Just nothing came through. So that information gets transferred to the feds, and by law, that information's not allowed to be stored. It's supposed to not be stored, right?
Right.
So we, as a dealer, the 4473 that you fill out on every firearms purchase, whether you have a LTC or not, is required by the dealer to remain in the dealer in our records. I believe it's for 20 years or as long as you're in business. And then after 20 years. But so that's used sometimes in good. Like this past week, there was a Texas Rangers contacted us because I forget, it was El Paso or McAllen. Somebody shot a peace officer, and they're trying to do a gun trace on this gun. Where did it go? Who did it come from? And so on. So oftentimes we get requests either from the ATF. Usually it does come from the ATF. So if a gun gets used in a crime, say it's a Glock, and what the local law enforcement agency does is go, hey, ATF, Glock, where did this Glock come from? They'll contact Glock. Glock, who'd you sell it to? Well, we sold it to this distributor. Distributor, who'd you sell this to? This is the gun trace. Well, we sold it to Lone Star Handgun. Then we get a request from ATF. We're doing a gun trace. Who'd you sell this Glock to? Then we pull on our records, and we look through our records. And
you give that info.
Yep, and here's the information. Then they come to you and go, who'd you sell this gun to, or are you the shooter?
Yeah.
So that's a gun trace. So that's not unreasonable. Could that be used maliciously?
The gun that I have, the info, when I bought it, the type and everything,
it's supposed to stay with the dealer.
Gotcha.
It's supposed to stay with the dealer.
Okay.
Although this new world we live in where everything's digital, I don't think there's any secrets anymore.
Sure.
That's for sure.
Okay.
Especially if it's ever on the net.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how most of those when a gun is purchased from a dealer, most of the time it's transmitted through the NICS system electronically. It's not over the phone anymore. just because it takes so long to do it
Yeah.
over the phone. And there's very little information that's transmitted through the NICS system. But does that mean it can't be used by anybody if they were to grab that information? Yeah. So yeah, is this a slippery slope? Absolutely. This is proof right here. This is slippery slope. And I love what the president said this past week when he's talking about he's banned ARs before and he'll do it again. I'm thinking, well, did you really ban them if they're lawful again? But he was talking about the assault weapons ban, the original, the 95 or 93 assault weapons ban, where it's a 10-year sunset. And the only reason they put it as 10 years is because they couldn't get everyone to vote for it. And Feinstein was involved in it. And anyhow, he's like, if you want to take over the government, you'll need a F-15.
Yeah.
Well, I think those folks in Ukraine are a good example of why you need rifles
Sure.
to protect yourself from any sort of tyrannical government, whether it be your government or another crazy government.
Well, I when I think about it to myself on the way to work at times, a lot of people can sit there that are not fans of the Second Amendment or guns in general. They'll say, well, what are you going to do against, the federal government and the military? And would you? It's not even an issue when I think about it at times of being successful against, let's say the federal government and military.
Mm-hmm.
It's the optics of what happens there.
It's a perception, right?
It's able to say it's almost, and this is kind of dumb, but it's almost like, Russia has nuclear weapons. We have nuclear weapons. Let's talk it out. It's a deterrent. Same thing. So it's like we have guns, you have guns. Let's talk it out.
Sweden, great example. Sweden, they're all adult males are required to be in their military force in some capacity until retirement. You're supposed to have a rifle at home and everything. Why is Sweden left alone on every world war? Because they know the populace is well armed. It's a deterrent. The Second Amendment was never intended for the population to fight the government. It's a deterrent for the government not to overstep its bounds because they know the civilian population has the ability to fight back.
Right.
And when people say, well, you cannot fight the U.S. military, you'll lose. I was like, well, Iraq and Afghanistan might prove differently.
Sure.
I mean, we had how many billions and billions of dollars spent in Afghanistan to fight a bunch of freaking turds in caves.
Well, even Russia tried to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, whether they're from a third world country or a first world country, and they have firearms, they're able to fight.
Right.
And that's the big thing right there. So, what does this do? It's the slowly taking away of your rights to the point where you don't realize. You look back and go, "All my rights are gone. I don't have the ability to defend myself." Look during the COVID pandemic, man.
Yeah.
I mean, Australia is a pretty good example, and Canada is a pretty
China was crazy.
Right. And they were able to control their population because the general population does not have firearms, does not have the ability to resist
Right.
the police state. So when they're going nuts and doing crazy, stupid things, how do you fight back? There's only so much you can fight back with a knife and a club.
Sure.
You need firearms, and that's that active deterrent like you're talking about. It's not the nuclear option, but man, you think a little bit differently if the civilian population is able to stop you, if they put their foot down and say no more.
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate thing with this. It's a taking away chip at those rights.
And that's I think where people kind of get lost in it is they look at it and they go, well, hey, it's one type of gun, it's one type of
Right. It's just one time, this one time.
But it's always just this one time.
Yeah,
You know?
It'll never happen again. It's all good. After this, we're good. No, that's not the case. And do you think criminals give a rat's butt
No.
about this?
No.
If you're going to do something illegal, you don't care. You really don't care. So this is designed not to stop crime. This is designed just to disarm the population or control the population. And the people will say, well, what's the harm in this? What is the harm in this? Well, $200 is a lot of money. And when this was created in the 30s, this was a lot more money. It's like the 6 foot rule. 6 foot and we're fine, right? It's just kind of made up. But when this stuff started happening in the 30s, suppressors were put on the list as a controlled item, and it's $200 tax stamp. Machine guns, you could have them, but you had to have a $200 tax stamp because that was expensive, right? Well, A, it's a lot of money. That's one reason. B, all these guns are now registered. And how do you disarm a population when you know who owns what? It's very easy to show up with your peoples and roll up in the police force and say, give me this gun. I know you have it. You can't hide. I know you have it. Well, what'd you do with it? I know you have it. And it's that taken away literally piece by piece.
Each individual person, one at a time.
Yeah. And, that'll never happen in the United States. How quickly did we turn on ourselves during COVID?
Yeah.
Where the police state, pastors were being arrested for having church freaking service.
Yeah.
You could have a dog groomer. Here in Texas, where it wasn't as far-reaching as other states, Texas and Dallas, there's dog groomers that are allowed to be open because that's somehow lawful. But you couldn't go get a freaking haircut. And the one lady that fought it and opened her door, she was arrested for cutting people's hair.
Yeah.
So don't talk to me about, the police will never do this. These were the police state coming in, and because you weren't wearing a mask or whatever else, and pro-mask, anti-mask, I don't care where you're at on that. Is that right to arrest people for that? So don't give me that this will never happen. The police would never do it. We get into the mob mentality a lot of times where we follow whatever the mob's doing, and it's okay, that's okay, that's okay. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that is so true on this type of stuff. So why do you think people are so staunchly pro-Second Amendment, shall not be infringed, is slippery slope, and they've drawn a line already? Because we see this line keeps getting moved and moved every freaking time. And to the point where the state is all of a sudden they've got all the power. Sure. And when they've got all the power, it's because they can control the population because the population doesn't have guns. That's not a good thing.
And that's one thing that people need to understand is if you take this gun and you register it, or let's just say you go and you register it and you pay your $200, that changed that gun not one bit. It's not any more dangerous than it was the day before you did it.
Right.
It's the exact same gun. It was very interesting when I saw, and I may screw this up, I want to say it was El Paso, the shooting at the Walmart.
Yeah.
I think Biden had come out and given some talk, and he said something to the effect of this SBR had a stock on it, and it made it that much more accurate. And when I heard that, I thought that was such an idiotic statement, because why would you want a firearm to be inaccurate? Right. Which, by taking that brace off or taking that stock off and just having the buffer tube,
it's more liability.
There's more liability. But you know what? At the same time, maybe that's the game, right? Making these things less accurate. That way we can say, well, look how dangerous they are. We've got to get rid of them completely.
That's a good point.
I told people, because we have short-term memories, man.
Well, yeah.
And I tell people, when you saw the rioting, when you saw the burning of cities, when you saw COVID, there's like 5 years in there that was just a great example of how terrible things can get really quick, And I think it was even up north or something. There was a police force or sheriff's department that was like, hey, we're not coming, I think there was even, at this point, it may have been an issue with the cost of fuel. They had already run through their fuel budget for that sheriff's department. I think it was in Illinois or Wisconsin or something. And it was like, we're not coming unless it's life or death. That's scary to hear from when you're somebody that says, I don't need firearms because the police will protect us. Mm-hmm. When the police can't protect you because they're busy downtown San Antonio or downtown San Francisco, or wherever they're at, and they can't come to help you, you're going to wish you were armed.
Well, then you get the Biden idiotic response when he was talking about you don't need a rifle, you just need a double-barrel shotgun. It's famous. He goes out and he's talking about, I've got a double-barrel shotgun. And if Jill hears something, I'll go outside and fire 2 bursts in the air, and they'll scare him off. Well, what if it doesn't? And the Second Amendment.
2 bursts in the air is pretty irresponsible.
It's illegal in the state of Texas. Yeah. Warning shots are not lawful. It's going to go to somebody else. It's a waste of ammunition. And if the other guy has a firearm, they're going to return fire. And
you're still loading the 2 barrels.
Right. I mean, so you can argue that, well, we need this for self-defense. Well, then you don't need this. This smaller thing is all you need for self-defense. Look at Mexico. You can own, I think it's 380 and smaller in your house. Although everyone knows the cartel's heavily, heavily armed. But It's lawful for you to own a 380 and smaller. Well, okay, is that adequate for self-defense? Who are you to tell me what is adequate for my family or my protection? Because look at the South Texas border. You're going up against heavily armed cartel members sometimes, or coyotes. And so is a handgun really going to be adequate for self-defense? If you're in Illinois and the police aren't responding because of the rioters. I'm an adult. That's part of the freedoms part, this. Yeah. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating.
I got a buddy of mine named Gary Brugman. We've talked a couple of times and we've done podcasts together. And he was Border Patrol. And I'm originally from George West. My sister's got a ranch out there. And there was a certain time period where they were probably having anywhere from 3 to 5 bailouts a day. It's just my sister and her girlfriend out there. 15 acres out in the middle of nowhere. I bought her an AR because they needed something to be able to take care of themselves. I can't help but feel, and this is all speculation, everything that we've always looked down to Mexico for and go, man, Mexico's crazy. Look how terrible it is down there. All the shootings and beheadings. Mm-hmm. That's slowly creeping in the southern states. Actually, not even just the southern states of the United States. But you're seeing cartel behavior everywhere. That's scary to me. And it's scary to me because I feel like the people who run the country make poor decisions and they put regular Joe Blow, Gabe Molina, sister, you, in a position where we will have to defend ourselves. Had they done something differently, and let's say even with the border, done something differently in the border.
Wait, you're telling me the federal government's not controlling the borders?
No, they're not. And they haven't.
No, and that's intentional. It's so intentional.
It's funny because it seems to have slowed down. We were having a conversation the other day. I was down there hunting. I did a terrible job, but we're having a conversation. And I asked my sister, I said, how's it going down here? Are the bailouts increasing, decreasing? She said, well, there's been fewer. And when you pay attention to the news, I always wondered this because all people had to do was turn themselves into a DPS. Mm-hmm. DPS would take them in, process them, babysit them for a while, and the federal government would send them wherever they wanted. They're basically the last leg of the cartel. They were doing cartel's work, basically.
Yep. Until Title 42 hit.
Yes. And so it started to slow down, but you still see these people just turning themselves in. There's no reason to bail out. And one thing that always bothered me was when people were bailing out and they're running into these ranches that are around my sister. There's been times where I'd have conversations with her and she'd say, I'm going to work and, here's a sheriff's department. It's a border patrol and there's 6 to 8 illegals sitting on the side of the road, just leaving her ranch. And it bothers me that not more was done. So when you get to that position, when you get to the position where you think about all the rioting in the cities and you think about COVID, and then you come back and you go, man, this thing's dangerous. You need to get rid of it. And it's like, this is the last thing I want to get rid of because we almost need it.
That was an interesting thing about summer 2020. It didn't matter which political affiliation you were. It didn't matter what your gender, what your nationality, what you identified as. Everyone was like, you know what? Guns are not a bad thing because it protects me from crazies. Sure. It really did.
And I think sales went up dramatically.
Yeah, it blew, record blowing all the time. I mean, it was crazy, and I don't miss that at all. I don't want to see my country like that. Sure. Nobody does, but a lot of people. But you're right. The short-term memory is like, do we really need that? Did you not remember what happened a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's an unfortunate thing. I think with the potential, people talking about more future lockdowns again. Oh man, I was talking to my wife about that. When China's having problems again, and there's potential another variation that they're looking for. I think they're looking for reasons to lock down. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are like, yeah, I'm all aboard that. Let's do this. Let's lock down. It's safety. We're all in this together. Then there's a lot of people that are like, no. Not at all. And that's we get closer and closer every year to another civil war.
Sure.
And it's over stupid stuff like this.
Yeah.
It really is. Most people, you leave them freaking alone, let them have their freedoms like they're supposed to. Evil will never go away. But when you start doing this to law-abiding citizens, people start really getting
And that's the only person it's affecting.
pissed off.
So if somebody, me, your average person, wants to do something to try and push back on this, what are the means of doing that?
Contact your representatives,
Okay.
state representatives all day long. Contact, screaming. Because I think our politicians need to know that this is not even a thing that we want to move an inch on. This is not if we concede here, they'll do this, and if we do give them a little here, no, this is this is non-issue. Firearms rights are a non-issue. Well, this will protect. What law would have stopped Uvalde's shooter? What law? What law? Well, he legally purchased firearms, so we got to increase the age of rifles to 21. So that would have really stopped him. There's nothing.
Yeah.
But all it does is make law-abiding citizens more and more restricted. So this needs to be a non-issue. That no, there's no movement on the Second Amendment. There's plenty of laws out there. Enforce the ones that are on the books. Why don't we do that? But we're creating more crap.
Yeah.
More crap for our law enforcement to enforce that's not useful anyhow. Why is it when somebody lies on a 4473, there's nothing that gets done to them? You can come in as a convicted felon and lie on that 4473, and it can come back. It's a no-go on the NICS spot because the NICS caught it. There's nothing that happens to them. Nothing. Really? Zero. Why isn't that enforced?
Sure.
But let's create more crap.
You would think there'd be some sort of penalty for lying on a document like that.
Well, it's a federal document. I mean, there is some penalty, but is it enforced? No. So it goes back to this is being allowed to happen for what reason? So, yeah, contact your representatives. Be that squeaky, loud freaking wheel. This is non-issue. Stop it right now, and move forward. And do not comply. And I'm not telling you break federal law. Do not break federal law. Do not break state law. Remove that stupid pistol brace. And I say stupid. Remove the pistol brace. Separate the two of them. It's not illegal.
Yeah.
And just don't give them more ammo. Don't register your freaking rifles. And I mean, it's as I'm sitting there talking to you, I was like, well, how many suppressors have I got a Form 4 on tax stamp? Yeah, it's been around for a long time, and I don't really like that either. Crazy thing about suppressors in Europe, it's legal to own a suppressor. That's an over-the-counter transaction.
Really?
It's a muffler. It's a
that.
sound reduction. If firearms were created 10 years ago, OSHA would mandate all of them come with suppressors. Because all a suppressor does, it's a muffler on your vehicle.
Yeah.
It makes it hearing safe.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I think people fail to understand. There are some calibers, I'd imagine, and some suppressors that are really quiet. But all the ones that I've heard, they just bring the noise down. They're
It's
not
hearing safe.
right.
Yes.
It's not like
it's not Hollywood
a puff
quiet.
of wind. Mm-hmm. It's just bringing down that decibels.
Yep.
So.
That's all it is. So, yeah, do not comply.
Josh, one last thing before I let you go, man.
Yeah.
The AR-15 is super popular weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Please explain to people who don't know any better what the name AR-15 stands for.
Armalite rifle, and I forget why it was the 15 portion, but Armalite. That's the original, not the original manufacturer. That's the original manufacturer, basically, for all purposes that created the original Armalite rifle of 15, and it was. That's the sporting version of it. The select fire, what people would consider assault rifle, or the full auto is the select fire. It can go from semi to full auto to select fire, 2 or 3 rounds. And as somebody that owns full auto firearms and has used full auto firearms in foreign countries, full auto is a suppression weapon. It's not accurate. It
Right.
just lay the hate. You want accurate fire, you go to semi-automatic every time you press that trigger. So that's what an AR-15 is. It's a rifle that looks like what the military carries, but it can't go to full auto. Every time you pull the trigger, it fires 1 round. You release the trigger, it doesn't fire. A full auto or a select fire, because it can go to semi-automatic or full auto, you pull the trigger, and as long as there's ammunition, it keeps firing until you let go of the trigger, and then it stops firing. So full autos are fun to play with. They're fun to suppress people that are trying to harm you, but they're not as far as effective. They're not as effective as a semi-automatic.
Right.
So
what are those triggers that are they call them binary
binary triggers. there's lots of ways, and those are being outlawed too by the ATF. All of a sudden, that stuff that used to be legal, they're saying it is illegal.
Because isn't it a rule that it's a finger movement, right? For
Yes.
every finger
So
movement.
ATF considers a select fire weapon anytime. One trigger pull, one fire. That's it. So there's some binary triggers out there that you pull the trigger, it fires. When you let go of the trigger, it fires. So every action, it fires. And that's legal. It's a workaround on the ATF rulings. And they're starting to say those are full auto weapons, kind of like the bump fire. Bump fire, all that is the same thing you can do. You hold your rifle lightly and you just keep your finger steady and you let that recoil move and it just fires. And that's how the bump fires were lawful, because you're pulling the trigger just one time. Well, they considered that full auto. And that was just a function of playing and screwing around, wasting ammo. But, the speed limit on most roads is like 65, 70. Does your car stop at 65, 70?
No.
No, it can go to 120 or whatever it is. Well, that's illegal, but it still is able to do that. Your rifle, it's able to fire very, very quickly. In some hands, it's faster and more accurate than others. Jerry Mitchell, old fart dude that can fire anything on this earth stupid fast. He can almost outrun machine guns.
Really?
Oh, pull up Jerry Mitchell and any number of videos that guy puts out, and it's amazing what that man can do. And but that's just from training. But so the point being, these are just tools, and in the right hands, they're good tools, and in the wrong hands, they're bad tools. But they're still a tool.
Right.
Just because you own a guitar doesn't mean you're a rock star. Just because you own a rifle doesn't mean you're a good guy or a bad guy. It's the person behind the firearm. And I like to err on the side of most people are good. Most people are going to do the right thing. Evil's always going to be out there no matter what I do, though. And when fewer people are able to protect themselves from the evil, that's when the wolf comes to play.
Sure.
And,
leaves people, the
right.
law-abiding citizen, just that much more unprotected.
Gabe, I'm okay if you own a full auto machine gun, as long as I'm able to own a full auto machine gun too.
Sure.
People are very nice at a gun range. Mm-hmm. All of us at work here carry guns. Everyone coming here is carrying a gun. We don't hear people. There's no fist fights that ever happen out here. Even when people don't follow the rules, we have conversations because everyone's very respectable, because It goes back to the nuclear option, because all of us are carrying firearms. Nobody wants to go that level. And we act like adults.
Yeah.
Because it's even playing field.
Right.
That old saying, God made everyone equal, Samuel Colt ensured it.
Right.
And just because of that, it puts us all on an equal playing field.
Well, Josh, where can people find you guys? Where are you located here in the range? I guess your social media.
Yeah, LoneStarHandgun.com. We're at 2 Amendment Way. We got that changed over I got the road renamed. So we're 2 Amendment Way, Converse, Texas. Although we're San Antonio, or unincorporated Bexar County, and we're the largest range in San Antonio, in the San Antonio region. We have over 80 dedicated shooting positions, targets out to 300 yards, all reactive steel targets. We have private bays, we have the sporting clays, we have archery. We have classes. Okay. We're always improving upon out here.
And I was telling you earlier, there's some female friends of mine that are got into it. So y'all do a ladies class,
it was called Daughters of Texas. The ladies learn to shoot class. In that class, ladies get to shoot about 6 different guns that were recommended for new shooters. And because that class is taught by somebody other than husbands, boyfriends, dads, and brothers, it generally goes pretty smooth for the ladies. It's a lady instructor teaches that class. It's a great introductory class. It's a classroom as well as range time. That's our second most popular thing outside of LTC as far as classes. And that's a small class size. We only have up to 10 ladies in that class, and when they're on the firing line, we have 3 instructors, so it's a high instructor to student ratio.
Okay, good.
Because we want people to come back and shoot. The worst thing somebody can do is buy a gun and never go shoot it, or they buy it one time, shoot it one time, and I'm good. Because a common misnomer is ladies should own revolvers because it's so easy to shoot. You can miscycle a revolver, and it's not fun to shoot because all the energy is transferred into your arm. While a semi-automatic, the slide takes up, and a lot of times people will think, well, she bought it, it's in her wherever drawer, and if she ever needs it, she'll be able to just point and shoot. I would rather have somebody have some knowledge about shooting and actually shoot every once in a while, So some familiarity. So if they need to shoot somebody, they're probably going to hit their target.
Sure.
I don't want to just have somebody scare them away because they're shooting and missing. And also, it's a liability. Every time you pull the trigger and you're trying to defend yourself or someone else, if that round misses, where's that round going to go? So shooting is a perishable skill. Go shooting every couple months. I'm not saying you need to be a Delta Force door kicker and be top tier or whatever. Because Stephen Welford, fat old plumber, and I love Stephen, and he shoots out here regularly. He's not no James Bond. He was able to stop the Sutherland Springs shooter because he practiced every once in a while.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes. But go shooting. And remember, our founding fathers intended for you to shoot on outdoor ranges, not these Gucci indoor ranges.
Sure. Well, Josh, I appreciate your time, man.
All right, man.
Thank you again, and thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.